All right. All right. Okay, so we're going to get started. First, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Cassie Rice, and I own Gym Cats, and I'm my mom and my nephew and daughter run Desert Gym Cats, and so we're trying to do these parenting things to try to help everybody. And there's so much to learn and so much to know, and I definitely don't have all the answers, but just a lot of experience interacting with lots of different parents and kids, and so there's been things that I've learned along the way that I think can help a lot of people. And right now is a really tough time because of the pandemic and kids coming out. Every behavioral issue or every problem that people are having seems to be magnified. So we're trying hard to get through this, help kids the best they can. And this presentation hopefully will do a little bit of that. So I'm going to quickly share my screen first. Can you guys see that? Can you guys see that? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So this is for February 2022, and the main theme about it is confident kids. Like, are we helping or are we harming that confidence? So there's, have you met a lot of adults who have kind of low self-esteem? Maybe they picked the wrong mate in their life. Maybe they stay in a job that they hate because they feel like they don't deserve any better than the person they're with or the job that they don't like. They have lower self-esteem. So that is one of the things that in early childhood and as they grow into teens, that we can help or we can harm their confidence. So this is, it's a little bit about that. Are you raising what we call a quote difficult child? Some people think that is negative. So I'm trying to reframe the word difficult in that sometimes difficult means they question you. Sometimes it means they don't want to do what you're asking them to do. It's not necessarily bad, because a difficult child sometimes can be someone who is their own person as they grow up. So, you know, trying to reframe the word difficult about your child is another thing. Are you worried about being judged as a parent? Because a lot of parents are worried that people are saying, oh my God, my kid is acting difficult, and that means I'm a terrible parent. We had an incident here at the gym where there was a coach who works here and her kids were coming to Parents Night Out where they're supposed to be a little more wild and play around. But, you know, she was so worried that the coaches are saying that her kids were, quote, bad kids, you know, and really they were doing what kids do at Parents Night Out. So, you know, that's another thing to try to remember. What do you remember from your own childhood? So a lot of people remember from their own childhood something a little bit traumatic and negative. They don't remember the fun, happy times as much as the very negative ones. And, you know, I know that my daughter remembers some of the things when I was super hard on her, and that stuck in her head. So trying to remember what you think about when you have your own childhood. What did you remember most? And if you remember something traumatic and that stuck with you, you know, how did that affect you as you're growing up? But what if they just want to lay around and play video games all day? You know, that's another concern for parents. So we're going to go into that a little bit more as well. But it is scary because you don't want to pressure and be mean and negative and harsh, but you also don't want them to not want to do anything. So how do you balance all of that? So what can you do? So first, empowering them, actually really, really good. Make sure when you give them some choices, so there's choices you can give them, the empowerment of, would you like to do this now or would you like to do this later? And those can be the choices, but make sure you're okay with either choice. That's a very important thing, that when we're coaching, especially if you give them two choices and one of them you hope they don't pick, then that's not a good thing for you, because you want to give them the choice and be okay with whichever one they pick. Allow them to learn from their mistakes, because that is the way people learn. So mistakes are not bad. Allow them to learn from them and allow them to make those mistakes. Sometimes we want to avoid a mistake. We don't want them to have any negative experience, so we try to avoid everything, but that's not good for them as well. And then process praise. Process praise versus person praise. Do you guys, have you ever heard of process praise instead of person praise? Well, process praise is where you're talking about what they're doing. So it's not something like, you're so smart, you're so cute, you're so talented. That's person praise, and they can't really do anything about that. But process praise is when you're telling them how proud you are of the effort and how you're proud of them in what they're doing, not just who they are. Because when you have somebody who is knowing that it's about the process, that they have some responsibility, and that helps them. So if you read this screen, process praise is more likely to lead to resilient responses after negative feedback or failure. Children can still feel positive emotions even after mistakes because their value as a person hasn't been called into question. So on my next one, growth mindset is my number one thing to try to help kids, especially perfectionist type kids. And we want them to always think of things in the growth mindset. So challenges help me grow. When something's hard for me, that's an opportunity for me to get it. I can keep persevering. I learn these things. It's not the fixed mindset. Well, I'm never going to be able to do this. I can't. Failure, you know, is terrible. And if I'm frustrated, I must give up, and all those kinds of things. So if you haven't read this book, you know, get this book. It's the best thing I've read for parenting a perfectionist type child. Very, very important. Mindset by Carol Dweck. And if I had had that before my daughter was born, if I had read that, it would have really helped me a lot. Perfectionist mindset just can help you reframe the whole thing, which is really important. Also, in boys versus girls, on the next slide, you're going to see a little bit about a study, but boys tend to get more process praise and girls tend to get more person praise. So we want to watch out for that as well. Oops. Okay, so this is to do with process versus person praise. And boys were tending to get a lot more of that process praise and girls more of the person praise. This is a Gunderson study in 2013, but the main point is that last bullet point. It says the more process praise there is in early childhood, the more likely the children, when older, will believe that putting effort in is worthwhile. So that's, to me, what's really important about the whole thing, is that it helps them go, oh yeah, there's a reason for me to keep trying. So trying hard not to focus. It's really hard when you see a little cute 3 or 4 year old and to talk about how cute they are. You know, that's person praise. That's not necessarily as good as process praise, what you're proud of them. So happy that you said thank you to the waitress or whatever it is process praise. So we want to try to focus on that a little bit more. Okay, so parental apathy. That is something is a little bit of a problem at times when the parent is not involved in what the kid does at all. Obviously, anybody who's on this meeting it's not you. So you want to make sure that the ones who are maybe the absentee parent or the father who doesn't seem to care, those do affect them. So, but what's your role if the athlete or the child needs to be the leader or kind of helping guide their own way or choosing their own way? You do need to show that they have value as a person. So we sometimes have where the mom is very involved in their gymnastics and the dad has zero interest, no interest whatsoever. It's mom's thing, it's the kid's thing, and they don't really care. Well, that does harm the child because they need to feel that it matters to the dad as well as to the mom. So we see some issues with kids if only one parent cares and the other one doesn't seem to show any interest or see any value in it, then it gives them conflicting messages. So if you build up your kids, it does help with their confidence. So keep showing what you're proud of and that they matter to you no matter what, especially as teenagers when they act like they don't give a crap. So sometimes teenagers don't act like they care at all, but they do. All right, so more of the killing confidence is hovering parents. And sometimes we're seeing that, especially with people who are trying to be really good parents. I always thought if I'm on top of everything, I'm being a really good parent. And that actually isn't the case, because when you're doing too much for them, something they can do for themselves, that harms their confidence, or something they can almost do for themselves, that even harms their confidence. Making parenting decisions based on your own ego, those are hard for them as well. So here's a few statements that I just wanted to read for you, just in case this comes into mind at all. But do I care more about what other people think of me than what my child needs? Do I stay on his back because I'm afraid he's incapable and will fail if I let up? Do I worry that she will fall apart if I'm not with her? If he gets a D in math, do you give yourself a D in parenting? If you have a yes answer to any of those, then that could mean you're a little bit more of a hovering parent. What they do doesn't reflect on you as a parent. I'm going to share that quick presentation that we had that was in the email, but just part of it, just because it talks about this, and I think this is really, really important. So,
send our children the message, hey kid, I don't think you can actually achieve any of this without me. And so with our over-help, our over-protection, over-direction, and hand-holding, we deprive our kids of the chance to build self-efficacy, which is a really fundamental tenet of the human psyche, far more important than that self-esteem they get every time we applaud. Self-efficacy is built when one sees that one's own actions lead to outcomes, not, there you go. Not one's parents' actions on one's behalf, but when one's own actions lead to outcomes. So simply put, if our children are to develop self-efficacy, and they must, then they have to do a whole lot more of the thinking, planning, deciding, doing, hoping, coping, trial and error, dreaming and experiencing of life for themselves. Now, am I saying every kid is hardworking and motivated and doesn't need a parent's involvement or interest in their lives and we should just back off and let go? Hell no. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when we treat grades and scores and accolades and awards as the purpose of childhood, all in furtherance of some hoped-for admission to a tiny number of colleges or entrance to a small number of careers, that's too narrow a definition of success for our kids. And even though we might help them achieve some short-term wins by over-helping, like they get a better grade if we help with do their homework, they might end up with a longer childhood resume when we help. What I'm saying is that all of this comes at a long-term cost to their sense of self. What I'm saying is we should be less concerned with a specific set of colleges they might be able to apply to or might get into, and far more concerned that they have the habits, the mindset, the skill set, the wellness to be successful wherever they go. What I'm saying is our kids need us to be a little less obsessed with grades and scores and a whole lot more interested in childhood providing a foundation for their success built on things like love and chores. Did I just say chores? Did I just say chores? I really did. But really, here's why. The longest longitudinal study of humans ever conducted is called the Harvard Grant Study. It found that professional success in life, which is what we want for our kids, that professional success in life comes from having done chores as a kid. And the earlier you started, the better. That a roll up your sleeves and pitch in mindset, a mindset that says, there's some unpleasant work, someone's got to do it, it might as well be me. A mindset that says, I will contribute my effort to the betterment of the whole, that's what gets you ahead in the workplace. Now, we all know this. You know this.
all right, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. All right. Can you guys still see me? Hear me? I lost you. Okay. All right. So when I'm having parent meetings a lot of the time, how come I can't see you guys anymore? Hold on. All right. Let me go back and share again. because I put that the share had to have, hold on, let me try one more thing. On my share screen, optimize, that's the problem. Okay, now I can see. All right, so when I'm having meetings with parents, a lot of the times they're coming in when they're talking about a problem. They go, well, I told them this. I told her to do that. I told him that. And it's I told. And what I would prefer, if we could get to, let's see if we can switch screens. When your child is having a problem, ask questions instead of moving in for the fix. That's really hard to do. So what is it you want? You know, asking them something like that. How can you get that? What can you do about it to change it? They usually know too. That's the thing. And how might that happen? So whenever you're having these problems, instead of just fixing things or telling them what to do, have them come up with it. It's the greatest thing for them. All right, so that's about the confidence. The next part I wanted to go into had to do with food, because unfortunately in the area, especially in sports and with our Instagram body image society we're living in, there's been a lot of problems with food. And I want to just make sure I get some of these things out there to people and try to get them educated about some of the problems that it can create. So first of all, kids and parents deserve a good relationship with food. And many adults do not have that. And a lot of it is because we label things good food and bad foods. So this little slide just kind of says, here's some good foods, and here are some also good foods. And it's about moderation. Some foods are optimal and some are less optimal, but there's no good food or bad food. When you label things good food or bad food, then you're making it a judgment on them. So if you eat a bad food, then you feel bad, or you feel guilty, or you feel like a failure. If you label things bad, a lot of times that leads to restriction and overeating. And a lot of the problems with food have to do with the mental side of it. When you tell them, you're not supposed to have that, and you're like, okay, I won't have that, I'll restrict it. And then all of a sudden you go crazy and you eat way too many of them. So 90% of the time when people restrict a food they like, they end up overeating eventually, and repeat the restrict overeat cycle over and over again. And the problem with that is when you have the, oh, well, I just ate a bad food, a cookie, might as well eat the rest of the cookies, the whole box. Well, that mentality is similar to, well, I just got a flat tire, might as well flatten the other three. You know, so that's how we're trying to help with this and think about it differently. Negative mindset is one of the many foundational reasons that people struggle with food and nutrition. So that's a real important thing. Let's see. So I grew up in when someone lost weight, you compliment them. And that's the way I grew up. Everybody did that. Wow, you worked so hard, you lost weight. People noticed and they thought that was a really great thing. But really, it's not a good thing. I've learned I will not compliment people on losing weight ever again, because what it means sometimes is you're complimenting these terrible things going on in their life. And changing your body size and also, you know, telling them now you look better, that means they looked bad before. You know, so you don't want to compliment someone on weight loss. And I didn't realize that until going through a lot of education on eating disorders and a lot of problems with disordered eating and how people are dealing with food. So here's one more screen. I just really love this girl. But if you're a parent, please do not ever put your child on a weight loss diet. Talk about foods being good or bad in front of your child. Make negative comments about your child's body or appearance. Sometimes even I found myself doing this. Oh my gosh, look at this picture when you were so little. Even like that was starting to, you know, like, oh, now they're bigger, and now do they feel bad that they're bigger? You know, so I'm trying to get away from that. Don't praise your child's body like, oh, look how tiny your waist is, or shame your child for their weight, or, you know, and I don't know who does this, but there are some people who withhold love because of that, which is crazy. But if you're just speaking negatively about yourself or your body image or somebody else who's bigger, that is also a big problem. So, and then the last thing is just a few scenarios that we could go through and talk about if anybody has anything in particular to their situation that they want to talk about, because, you know, I definitely have made all my mistakes, but this is the end of the presentation. I just had some questions and comments, a few scenarios. What if you have a kid who's way too hard on themselves? I've had one of those who's really, really hard on herself and hard on everybody around her if they're not perfect. What about the kid who seems they don't care about what other people think? Actually, usually they do. What about the kid who has self-esteem issues and sometimes doesn't feel they deserve any success? That's a hard one. The kid who has pressures at home to achieve and focuses on grades and scores, etc. That's really hard as well. And then the kid you can't seem to get motivated to do anything. What can you do? So these are all some challenges that we're dealing with. That is the end of that. I didn't know if anybody wants to come on, talk, you know, tell us a little about yourself, tell us a little bit about any struggles that you're having, or if you just came to get education and some knowledge. We have a couple of coaches who came on, which is really nice. But can I go around and each person introduce themselves? Would that work for you guys? Start with Gina.
Hi, I have 3 daughters, and my youngest one loves gym cats. She's not like there, but she comes with flip-flop shops and loves it. She wants to come consistently. But with my 3 daughters, I just wanted to get more education.
Okay.
I feel like I'm doing a lot of what you're saying. I hope I am. I hope they see it that way. I prefer them to kind of figure things out on their own. And then I do have, like I said, my youngest one, who is, she has a lot of school spirit, which I love. Recently, she was involved in a food fight at her school and was taken off the cheer team.
Oh no.
So that's been really hard for her.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to see what else you were saying about that. Like, yes, a difficult situation. And I'm trying to remember that there are 3 sides to every story. And I'm trying to remember that sometimes, as you said earlier, difficult situations and kids, for lack of a better word, not always a bad thing.
Right. And why did they take
So
her off? Why did they take her off the cheer team? I mean, the food fight was
she was in her uniform during the food fight, and it was a bad example for the population, which I get. Like, there were certain rules. We signed a contract, and I get that. But then I did
permanently off the cheer team, like for the whole year.
For the year, yeah.
Really? Okay, that seems really harsh.
Fourth grade.
I mean, to me, I would, if I was the school, if we had that here, we use it as a learning episode. You know, here, this is why you wouldn't want to do this. We think of you as a leader, whatever the reasons are. But the punitive punishment mentality does seem to stick with them more negatively. And now she may think, well, now, see, I really am a bad person in some way, when she just made a mistake, or you just got caught up in the moment, or whatever it is.
Right.
You know, so I just,
it's been interesting. So I put it back on them. I said, she needs to meet with the counselor once a week. She's scarred from this, like 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But I did put it back on them. She needs to sit with a counselor once a week and talk about all of it. Yeah, I just wanted to get more insight here. So thank you for this. I appreciate this.
Yeah, I mean, we've dealt with, like, we had one of the parents, her daughter, just out of nowhere, she's 11, I think, whatever. She took one of the other kids' phone, threw it in the trash. She was just, I mean, it was wrong. I mean, obviously wrong. You don't take somebody's cell phone. Mom was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Very upset. And since that episode, because it was like framed in she'd never done anything like this. So the parents were like, oh my God, you know. So, but then she kind of, since then, and more behaviors that are like going down that road. And she goes, it's been hard. We're trying to, you know, tell her she's not a bad person and this was just a mistake, but she's, you know, thinking of herself that way. So, and we're just trying to navigate that whole thing and not have kids define themselves and realize, like, if we're all honest, all of us adults are honest, we screwed up. I mean, come on, who has not? And if you think you're so high and mighty and your child should never do this kind of bad thing, I mean, it's a little ridiculous, because you did something and you were mischievous, or you did something you shouldn't have done. And you hope that they never get to the point that they do something that's life altering, but otherwise you want them to learn from it. And to me, a food fight is just not a really terrible one.
Yeah, so we're dealing with it best we can, but I appreciated that TED Talk. I didn't watch it when you sent it in the original email, but I appreciated that snippet. And it's like, okay, what can we do? How do we want to resolve this? What do we want to do? And we took steps. So working on it, but I appreciate all this. So thank you.
Well, that's great. Wendy, do you want to jump in? And unmute. Did you get there you go.
I run meetings once a week but I'm a participant now, so that's good. My name's Wendy. I work at Gym Cats, as well as have 2 little girls. And I just like to always listen and learn from Cassie. I know both of her daughters as well, and I feel like both of my daughters mirror hers. I've got a perfectionist, and then I've got a woohoo second. I just really enjoyed the eating, because that is always just something that's social media is about, and raising girls. I thought that was really good, the eating part. And then I loved the praise versus the personal praise versus the work ethic or kindness or helping hands, or, it takes more effort to realize what they're doing correct and really praising that. But I really like that. So I'm going to work on praising that better. And then the TED Talk, I really enjoyed. I'm going to watch the whole thing, because my husband and I always go back and forth with chores, and I'm the guilty one. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's that value, right? And just kind of the number of chores and what they're in charge of will be interesting to see. And I like covering parent too, because sometimes I feel like I try to do too much for them, when you can see that they want to do it themselves. So I need to back off and let them make those mistakes themselves. And the other day, my daughter said, I'm just trying to solve the problem, because we talk about, well, what could you do to solve the problem? But she was trying to tell me, and she could verbalize it. So I needed to still back off, Mom.
Great. It's hard to do, because you feel like you're not being an attentive mother. But, sometimes we're not the best for our kids, unfortunately. We jump in and try to fix something, and we really should just let them, there's parents who do kids' homework for them. And I mean, you're a teacher and so it's like, it's not good for them, but, all trying to learn and educate ourselves to help out. This terrible process of raising kids is very difficult. There's so many challenges to it. What about Marissa? Is that Marissa's iPhone? Or are you the one that didn't have video? Somebody said they didn't have audio. No, that was Stephanie. Stephanie. What about Casey? Hi, Casey.
Hi. Oh, it's Wendy and Keith.
Hi. How are you?
Good. So we're on here more to educate ourselves about gym cats, because
Okay.
we are out in Southern California, so we're not very familiar with the gym.
Yep.
So we're just learning your culture and everything about what you guys, how
Cute
you guys
puppy.
coach and everything. Thanks.
Very cute puppy.
Wendy.
Do you have anything to about the presentation, or about what struggles or things that you're needing help for?
Some of the topics that you posted at the very end, I was curious about your response to them. I think there was one about the scores.
Uh-huh.
I think that might have been your last one that popped up.
The The kid who has pressures at home to achieve and focuses on grades and scores.
Yeah, not necessarily at home, but maybe from the gym. If the gym is putting pressure on them and wants them to do certain skills because it'll make the gym look better. And so the girl is not able to do what she wants to do because she's trying to meet, she needs to hit a score for the gym. So it's that pressure from the coach more.
Oh, okay. Because normally you are, I mean, for our gym, when you're trying to do better for yourself and score higher for yourself, it also is better for the gym. I mean, you don't, but basically you want to see that kid feel good about themselves and the score reflects that. So that's the reason that we usually try to stick to rules or requirements and trying to not just go, well, do whatever you want on that level, even though that's a point off, for not having the requirement. We try not to do that, but we try to keep them within the framework of the rules so that their score isn't really negatively affected. I mean, I've had kids that are like, oh my God, I get 7s, I'm the worst, so you don't want to set them up for that. So you would think that that's what the gym would do. I mean, that's what I would think there, but this Stephanie said, my daughter moved into a higher section and recently had a birthday. What I'm seeing lately is a sense of trying to fit in by acting big, but more troubling, leaning into cruel or sarcastic behavior seems to seem cool. Recommend some advice for keeping kids kind when they start moving through the levels. Yes. So there's I'm struggling with coaching one of the kids in my group who it's kind of cool to not make skills. It's funny, I'm the class clown, I don't put effort in, and that's really cool. And that's really, really hard because your job is to try to help them get to be better. And if it's really cool to be bad or not do very well in the sport, that makes a job as a coach or a parent, really, really hard when it's cool to be kind of mean or bad or acting big or whatever you said there. So my suggestion too is that there's probably something to me because of the kid that I'm coaching that's like this. There's a self-esteem issue. There's a reason they need some kind of attention, and I don't like when coaches or parents go, they just do everything for attention. I like to say people do things for attention because they have a need that's not met. They don't feel good about themselves. They want some kind of focus on them. So trying to work with them so they get what they need, I think is a big thing. Trying to get that self-esteem from something positive versus getting it from just getting them attention from something negative. Is that what you're meaning about what your daughter's going through, Stephanie? Yeah. Okay, Victoria, do you have anything you want to contribute?
Not necessarily. I was just coming by because I honestly thought there would be a lot more parents here because this was at a time where I've had many parents express their frustrations.
Right.
And hopefully people will watch the recording because this is actually super helpful and it would fix a lot of problems that parents seem to have, even when they're not like currently pursuing it. So I thought I would be here like just in case any parents have any Excel parents have any questions, but
right.
There's only 8 people here, so
yeah, exactly. No, I thought there would be more as well too. We are literally going through phone calls and issues. I mean, especially coming back from this pandemic with so many kids having whatever their anxiety is, their anxiety is bigger. They're acting out more. They have fears, they have more fears. So we're really trying to, help everybody with whatever tools they might have. And I think it's great for coaches because coaching and parenting is not that different in a lot of ways. So I think it's really helpful for coaches or parents to be on this kind of a meeting.
right. And on some of the score things, because I know my group has also had problems with that, I try to encourage them in saying, if you do feel better about a higher score, you should feel better about that higher score because you've been practicing to get a higher score and not just because you wanted the higher score, and scores do reflect in your practice. So if you're looking to get higher scores, you might not always get them, but it's okay because at least you're still practicing as hard as you can. And if you're practicing as hard as you can, then you're probably going to be scoring better anyway. Hopefully, that's obviously not
on Friday.
Perfect given.
Yeah, on Friday night, I had a parent who came up to me and she was getting higher scores in November than she is now. And she's talking about quitting. And the mom was completely distraught because she didn't want her kid to quit. And I said, well, first of all, you want them to lead the way. Does she want to do something else? Because she was saying she did other circus type things that she really enjoyed or whatever, or TNT. And so she was very upset that she can't help her with what she's doing wrong and that her daughter doesn't know. And I said, well, first of all, I'd be extremely surprised if your daughter doesn't know the corrections. We repeat the same kind of corrections over and over again. If they don't really know, it's very, very, very unusual. So once we got down to it, she did know the corrections. But her mom, as much involvement as the parent has in a kid, it seems to be eventually that's how much the kid backs off on their ownership and responsibility for their sport. So that would be one thing I would try to caution everybody about doing. If it's too important to you, it becomes less important to them. So it also puts pressure on them. So we want to try to create an environment where it is really their thing. They're leading the way. You love watching them no matter how they do. You don't treat them any differently based on their scores or their performance, that you're proud of them for getting out there and just participating in a sport as hard as gymnastics. So, there's a lot of things that we could go into more deeply, but the main thing to me is trying to encourage by empowering them, asking them questions. This child was perfectly capable of figuring out how to fix and correct things. She just didn't feel like it. And sometimes, like when my younger daughter didn't feel like it for a long time, and then all of a sudden she did. And that's just what happens. And the more you pressure and push, it just creates stress and anxiety, or does make them want to go, hey, this isn't my sport, it's my mom and my sport, and I'm done. I don't really care. And I've watched that as kids become older teenagers. So you got to be careful what you do as a parent who's trying their best, but he may end up not doing the right thing there. Does anybody have anything else before we kind of adjourn? I thought, we had the people who did come, we got some good insight into some things. Hopefully more people will come to the next one and we can keep the conversation going.
Cassie, we just had a question. Do you do this like often, having these Zoom meetings?
We did. We were going to try to do it in August and February, so that we do it twice a year. Okay. But of course, we talk to parents all the time. I'm always putting out educational articles, and there's so much to learn about how to parent an athlete. And it's just, I made all the mistakes I made. I can tell you how to avoid those. But just to be a little bit more aware of it, because I didn't realize some of my focus was damaging my kids. I thought I'm just helping them with their perfectionist wanting to get this, and let's keep focusing on it and all that. Instead, I should have been like, hey, whatever you do, I'm proud of you. I love watching you. And that would have built up the confidence a lot more than me saying, oh, let me help you fix this, and let me help you get better at that. That wasn't good for them. And never coach your kids, because that's not good.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Cass.